First.
When the murder started, for the most part, they were just another murder.
Shauna Hawk, Betty Jean Balcom, Deborah Slaughter.
Each one seen individually.
Here's another homicide.
2 murders in 2 days.
Who is African-American.
Caroline Love, Michelle Stinson.
Another victim to roll out.
A lot of women are in fear.
I just talked to her and now she's dead.
The patterns of women being killed didn't really add up.
Brandy Henderson and 9 others.
These 10 murders.
The murder count possibly totaling 13.
Why didn't police see it sooner?
All victims of an unknown suspect.
Whoever did this was a ghost.
Danger disguised as a friend, and his victims never saw him coming.
One, why did it take so long to see a pattern?
We feel bad that we did not know that sooner.
But it wasn't just police. It was those of us in the media and I think the community.
Man, it was right there.
This young mother was killed in the same manner. All had been strangled.
He looked at me and he said, "We think we have a serial killer."
You know, if you don't get him off the streets fast, he could do it again.
I was not going to stop until I found out who did this.
If we'd only had the little pieces.
Shauna Hawk.
Had we only known what we know now.
She was one of his victims too.
So this was Shauna's first prom. Oh man. I remember the day she found the dress. Purple was her favorite color.
Shauna Hawk was a very beautiful young woman. She went to Central Piedmont Community College.
All I can tell you about Shauna is that incredible human being.
Raised by her mother, single mom at the time. She was industrious, ambitious, worked. She wanted to make something out of herself.
She was the apple of her mother's eye.
Shauna was born on December 2nd, and I was all of 18 years old. I remember when Shauna was crying, and the minute they laid her on my chest, our eyes locked, and she just calmed right down.
She was younger than me, but, you know, bossy. That's the right word for Shauna. She was bossy. Every time.
She's worried about the long hours and whether she's going to be able to keep up with her schoolwork. She actually talks with the Taco Bell manager, a guy named Henry Wallace.
I went and met him once, and he said, "Nice to meet you, Miss Sumter. I've hired your daughter, and I think she's going to be great on our team."
That year, February the 19th, was on a Friday.
Dee Sumter refers to that day as Horrible Friday. But it started out as just any other day at their home on Elon Street.
She said, "Well, I'm gone. I love you." And I said, "I love you more." And then she stuck her head back in the door and she said, "Mom, I love you." And I said, "Baby, I love you more." And then she took off.
That afternoon, Dee gets a call at work.
Her godson's mother called and said, "Miss Dee, have you heard from Shauna?" And I said, "No." She said, "Miss Dee, I'm not trying to say anything, but something's wrong. I don't know what, but something's not right."
She noticed some unusual things around the house when she came home. Her daughter's car was not there. That wasn't unusual, but what was unusual is it was a cold day in February, and Shauna's purse was in the house and her winter coat was in the house.
She's wondering, well, what's going on? Where is she?
I called her boyfriend and I said, "Daryl, get over to my house, please, now." And he's just shaking his head. He said, "This is baffling." I said, "More than baffling. Something is definitely wrong."
And they decided to call the police and report her as missing. As they were waiting for the police to respond, Daryl decided to go looking through the house and just check.
I hear his footsteps. He walks into the bathroom.
He pulled back the shower curtain and found Shauna in the bathtub and a small amount of water, fully clothed, and she was dead.
The next sound I heard was him blood-curdling scream. He runs back down the hall. Miss Dee, dial 911. She's in the bathtub." Last thing I remember is seeing them push her out on a gurney doing CPR.
It was obviously too late at that point.
Subsequently, we find out that she was raped and then strangled inside of her bathtub.
And that was kind of unusual for us at the time. We did not have a lot of strangulations during that time with the homicide investigations.
Strangulation is rare. It's more commonly seen in domestic cases or cases where people have a relationship.
Murder? I couldn't hardly even spell the word murder before Shauna was murdered.
We didn't have any damage to the doors. We didn't have any damage to the windows. So we believe that she allowed the assailant to come inside the residence.
The killer was also meticulous in terms of going through the house, making sure he wiped down anything that he may have touched. So they had no DNA, they had no fingerprints. In effect, whoever did this was a ghost.
Who would want to kill this beautiful, innocent, sweet, kind, loving person? My best friend, my daughter.
We didn't find anything significant that would draw us to point to any particular suspect at the time.
She couldn't have had an enemy. She wasn't that kind of person.
So after she was found murdered at her home, the police tried to locate her car. It was not discovered for weeks, and when it was discovered, it was found in a parking lot at Central Piedmont Community College.
The front seat was pushed back, and Shauna was short. So I think the only thing they took away from that is that it had to be somebody that was taller than Shauna.
In the course of their investigation, police actually are missing something rather important. 8 months earlier, a young woman by the name of Caroline Love disappeared. And it turns out that Caroline and Shauna were friends.
Something ain't right. They need to go back and look at what happened to Caroline, because Caroline's missing and now here Shauna is dead.
What's coming is an incredibly rude awakening.
There's some decomposition on the body.
For the Charlotte Police Department.
What soon followed was a wave of death and grief unlike anything this town has ever seen.
The best way to describe Charlotte in the early 90s would be is that it was growing extremely fast.
Charlotte was at the beginning of its banking boom.
Johnson from 20.
After the Charlotte Hornets got here, I think that's when everyone started using the term world-class city. The skyline seemed like it changed every 3 to 4 months.
Charlotte was booming. A lot of steel and glass and a lot of looking upward. Maybe not enough looking down.
Police are pointing out the drug dealers.
And what was happening on the ground.
Drugs are a problem in every large city in America.
In the neighborhoods and in communities.
Police say that this is what they call a crack house.
We were headed towards one of our highest murder rates in the city's history.
On the legitimate side, banking was the growth industry. On the criminal side, drugs was the growth industry.
Gun was found behind the dresser along with the crack bag.
It was a very, very violent period of time.
Drugs and their debris were...
In fact, I would say it was the most violent period in Charlotte's history.
Members of the violent Mustang gang were arrested.
In the 90s, we were not equipped to handle the murder rate. We had maybe 8 homicide detectives, but only 6 were actively working.
It was almost like they were having to work homicides like car accidents.
It's the 90s in Charlotte, North Carolina. Skyscrapers are going up, but at the same time, a series of crimes are unfolding. 20-year-old Shauna Hawk is found strangled in her bathtub, and her friend and co-worker, Caroline Love, has vanished.
Caroline Love went missing in June of 1992.
Caroline lived in East Charlotte. I lived in West Charlotte, and we all worked together at Bojangles.
The Love sisters, Kathy and Caroline, worked at Bojangles with Henry Wallace, who was Shauna Hawk's boss at Taco Bell.
She was a really fun person. She always had like a really cute boyfriend.
She didn't show up for work.
This don't sound like her, you know? Something's definitely wrong.
I know my mom, I remember her calling like everybody. She called everybody in our family, like, have you seen her? Is she over here?
It was like she just disappeared off the face of the earth.
She was living with this young lady by the name of Sadie McKnight. Sadie McKnight and her boyfriend, Henry Wallace, helped file the report for the missing person of Carolina Love.
Kathy, Henry, and Sadie are the ones who went to the police station to file the police report.
Shauna had the news on and she said, Mommy, Caroline is missing. Something is wrong. It's not like her just not to come to work and not call me or call work or say something.
When Shauna Hawk is murdered, police don't immediately tie that to the disappearance of Caroline Love, but there is a connection.
Before Taco Bell, Shauna had worked at Bojangles with Caroline.
She and Shauna were close friends. They were in high school together. They worked together. They were buddies. They hung out together.
My mom was on it. She was like, there's no way that within a year that Carol's missing, and then now one of her good friends is dead.
They always remained hopeful that she would be found alive and okay.
I thought so many times that she was gonna come back. So I remember even when searching for her, I had these two little dresses, and I wore them because I wanted to look nice, you know. I wanted to look nice in case she showed up.
4 months after Shauna Hawk was murdered, another young lady, Audrey Spain, turns up murdered as well.
I think this is one of my favorites.
Audrey was a free spirit. She lived life on her terms.
Spirited, adventurous, positive, a hard worker.
Audrey Spain was another young, attractive black female who also worked at Taco Bell.
I do remember receiving a call from Audrey's manager telling me that she had missed going to work that particular day and that he was concerned.
So they actually sent the manager or the maintenance people to her apartment complex, and when they entered the apartment complex, or entered her apartment, they found her deceased on the bed.
I don't know how much information they actually gave us at that time. I just remembered that she had been murdered, she had been strangled, there was a rape also.
It was devastating. It's just not something that you ever expect to have to deal with. Audrey was my younger sister, and we grew up together, so it was very difficult.
What did I miss? How did this happen? And you're totally blindsided. Yeah, totally.
The interesting thing about that crime scene was that the thermostat it was the summer months, had been turned way down.
The crime scene techs, when they got there, were shivering.
That's because the air conditioning had been cranked to slow down the decomposition process.
Apparently, her body had been there for at least 2 days.
In the first 6 months of 1993, Shauna Hawk and Audrey Spain have been strangled to death.
Before Shauna was murdered, a friend of hers, Caroline Love, had vanished. Even so, the detectives have no clue that these cases are connected.
I just don't feel like they knew. Maybe she was random, maybe not.
These cases never came together because there were other detectives working it and not just one. And so we had very little information to go on at the time to try to link it with any of the other homicides.
We just knew that we had another young black woman who is found murdered.
We have a possible serial killer working in the shadows. But do we know that? We have no idea.
In the months ahead, more Charlotte women will fall victim to strangulation and murder. But the killer will make a mistake, giving police a glimpse as to who he is. 1993 is the year of living dangerously in Charlotte.
Caroline Love, Shauna Hawk, Audrey Spain.
Peak murder rates, and somebody is killing young black women.
It was earlier this afternoon when a family friend found the body of the woman.
It was September of '93. We were called out to a home where a woman's body had been found.
When police got to this apartment off of Marvin Road, they found two very frightened children.
Michelle, yeah, I was there. Vividly remember Michelle Stinson. Here's a young woman who had been murdered inside of her own home with her children present.
Michelle Stinson was killed in front of her two children.
A friend drops by to visit Michelle.
He looked in the windows and saw one of her little boys playing and, was banging on the window.
Where's your mommy? Where is she? And they tell him, well, mommy's asleep on the floor.
And he was getting ready to leave when the little boy opened the door and he went in.
He finds her dead on the kitchen floor.
There were signs of strangulation, but her cause of death was 4 stab wounds.
As Michelle Stinson's bloodied body was taken away, those who knew her said goodbye with tears and tried to make sense of it all.
My goodness, what person, what monster could take the life of a mother in front of their children?
Police say that there is no sign of forced entry, and that indicates that perhaps Michelle knew her killer and invited him in. Despite that, they failed to find any viable leads or suspects.
Michelle Stinson's case, like Shauna Hawk and Audrey Spain, and the still missing Caroline Love, goes unsolved.
You can't even stay at home and be safe anymore. For some unknown reason, they just couldn't connect the dots.
Dee Sumter is a remarkable woman. Yes, her heart broke, but her will didn't.
Dee Sumter went on a public campaign to call attention to her daughter's death.
It's better knowing.
And she turned what was the worst possible situation into something extremely positive for this community when she, along with Shauna's godmother, Judy Williams, started an organization called Mothers of Murdered Offspring, which is still here.
I just knew I had a daughter who was murdered and it wasn't being investigated properly. I was appalled by that, angered by it, and I was not going to stop until I found out who did this.
They felt that the police department or the city didn't care enough because they were young black women.
Dee Sumter, whose daughter Shauna was on that list of victims, still wonders what if some of the faces were white instead.
Every time another youngster was murdered, there was Dee calling the press, going after the police, saying, "What are you going to do to help us?"
She was turning up the heat on the police.
They particularly attacked the police each and every day about what we were doing and what we were not doing, because they thought that we should be doing more, and we were telling them that we couldn't do any more than what we had. We were overworked and we were understaffed, but we were doing the best that we could.
Dear killer, I am the mother of Shauna Denise Hawk.
She wrote a letter to the editor calling out the person who took her daughter's life.
Something in me said he's got to have some type of a heart. Might be a dark heart, but it's a heart. Please, please, please come forward and turn yourself into the authorities so justice can be served and so you can get the help you need and so forgiveness can be given. For without this, you are eternally doomed. Can I have a moment, please?
Dee Sumter's letter appears in the Charlotte Observer. And in the same day's paper, a brief article, a woman in Charlotte found dead in her apartment. Here we go again, another victim.
In the mornings when Vanessa Mack had to go to work, her babysitter would come here to her house to pick up her 4-month-old daughter.
A young lady by the name of Vanessa Little Mack was murdered in her home.
I said, Vanessa, I said, get up, you know, like that. And then she didn't move and she didn't say anything. So I turned the bedroom light on. And I said, oh God.
Vanessa Mack was killed in February of 1994, almost to the day that Shauna Hawk had been killed a year earlier.
Blood was on her face and a towel was around her neck.
Her baby daughter, just yards away, was okay. Police believe the infant was in the home when her mother was killed.
Vanessa Mack was a hospital worker.
Just an honest, hardworking young lady doing the best that she can to provide for her family.
I don't know why they would have did it, because she was a good girl. She didn't bother nobody.
Vanessa Little Mack's cause of death was once again ligature strangulation.
There is a link to previous killings, but police don't seem to notice it at the time.
Vanessa Mack had a sister who worked at Taco Bell. So again, the correlation of another person working with somebody at a Taco Bell.
We started looking for financial card records and discovered that a bank card was missing from the scene.
They got her banking history and found that her teller card had been used unsuccessfully.
In her final moments, Vanessa Mack tricks her killer, giving him the wrong PIN to her ATM card.
She had made it up. It wasn't the correct password, so that's why he couldn't get into her account. She still fought back. She didn't give him everything he wanted.
There are security cameras on the ATM.
So we looked at the security camera footage and we could possibly say that it was a male of dark skin complexion.
But it wasn't a great picture. There wasn't a lot to go on.
The only thing you could see in the photograph was his ear.
And we did see an earring in the figure of a cross at that time.
A hoop cross earring. Only thing the photograph showed.
But that killer wearing a gold cross earring is about to make another mistake, revealing his identity.
Like a beast, sitting, waiting for a prey, just waiting to go and hurt someone.
It's March 1994 in the city of Charlotte, and someone has gotten away with murdering 4 women in a year's time.
My goddaughter was one of the victims. Shauna Hawk. She was one of his victims too.
Shauna Hawk found strangled in her home last February. And then 2 weeks ago, Vanessa Little Mack also strangled.
All black women in their 20s, all strangled to death in their own home.
Something's not right here, you know? Something is not right.
I mean, that's one question I want to have for the police department. Why hadn't they shown a real interest? And I really felt that we've been neglected.
All being investigated as seemingly unconnected. That is about to change in one single deadly day at the same apartment complex.
The Lake Apartments, and I would refer to them as the infamous Lake Apartments, because if there is any location in this town that's affiliated with these cases, that's the location.
The next victim is on March 9th of 94. 18-year-old Brandy Henderson, a young mom.
She was funny, she loved to joke around, she sang off key, but she thought that she could sing and we just let her do it.
Brandy lives with her boyfriend Lamar Woods and their 10-month-old son, Tyrese.
Brandy told me that when she had Tyrese, that she felt like her life was complete. She felt like she had made a masterpiece.
One night in March, Brandy calls her cousin George, asking him to come over and hang out.
She was like, well, I've got some Chinese food that I ordered from takeout. Why don't you just come over? Come on over. Come see me. And I said, well, it's already 8 o'clock. I'm tired. I've been working all day. I got to get up early tomorrow. And she said, oh, come on.
They're talking on the phone. Then there's a knock on the door.
The phone call was interrupted, and she said someone was at the door.
And I heard her in the background saying, just make sure you lock the door behind you. I didn't worry about who was there because she said lock the door behind you, so she trusted him.
Late that night, Brandy's boyfriend comes home from work.
The first thing he notices that sort of catches his eye is that kind of like the lights are off, which is a little bit unusual because he knows Brandy is home.
He turns on the light. The apartment's been trashed.
His stereo is missing. The place has been robbed.
So he starts checking around and he finds his kid and notices the kid is not really breathing normally. So then he's like, what's going on here?
Someone has tied a pair of shorts around 10-month-old Tyrese's neck. This child is struggling to breathe.
He runs to help him. He unties the things around his neck and then finds Brandy.
Brandy was in the bedroom, lying on the bed with a ligature around her neck.
You're watching as this woman's body is being carried downstairs, knowing her child has been injured, possibly gravely, and luckily he survived.
The next morning, as soon as I turned the news on,
we don't have a significant break anywhere in the case. We're still hoping that somebody may come forward with some information.
They had a stretcher rolling across the sidewalk in front of her apartment. And I knew at that time that it was real, and I just lost it because I just could not comprehend that I just talked to her and now she's dead.
The killer stole not only the stereo, but a Pringles can of coins that Brandy had been saving up.
However, the suspect got in there. Apparently he was let in or had access to get in on his own.
Contact 60130 on tag 2.
Right at this moment, detectives get an urgent radio call. They're needed back at the Lake Apartments.
Another woman is found strangled.
I could not believe that the next day we're back at the same apartment complex where another woman is found dead in her apartment. And this woman is Betty Jean Baucom. She's 24 years old. She has a 3-year-old daughter.
Betty Baucom, who lived somewhere in those same apartments, worked at Bojangles.
Betty never did anything wrong to anybody. She always tried to help people, and I mean, it just really hit us hard here.
The stuff hit the fan. It was crazy town, man. Everybody was over there. It seemed like there was 10,000 police cops over there.
I was interviewing people who were racing into the apartment complex.
We came here to make sure that my girlfriend was safe because her husband is at work and her daughter is home alone.
Did this concern you when you heard this?
Yes, it did. I mean, it's unbelievable.
The fear that it stoked was just insane.
I grew up in New York and I thought this was going to be like, you know, a safe haven out here. And apparently there is no safe haven anymore.
So now we have a major problem. Now we have 2 young ladies in the same apartment complex have been found murdered, and there's a lot of conversation.
I was in court and saw one of the homicide detectives, and I asked him, you know, what's going on? And that was the first I heard. He looked at me and he said, we think we have a serial killer.
Police worry this could be a serial strangler.
Betty Jean Baucom's car has been stolen.
We're looking for a vehicle now of the latest victim, and we believe the suspect has probably fled it.
So during this time, you know, we have an APB out for Betty Baucom's car, and we're looking citywide for the car.
Police found the car in this parking lot. Actually, it's right across the street from the apartment complex where the women were found murdered.
On the floor of Betty's car is a Pringles can stolen from Brandy Henderson.
So that connects the 2 murders at the Lake Apartments. Whoever killed Betty and stole her car must have also killed Brandy and stolen her coins.
Tonight, police aren't taking any chances at all. They're setting up perimeters all around the Lake Apartments.
Investigators say they need more information quickly.
You know, if you don't get him off the streets fast, he could do it again.
Use caution, be careful, and think before you open the door.
The killer is out there somewhere, and they feel certain, if given the chance, he could strike again.
Word tonight of a serial killer in Charlotte, North Carolina.
It's the shock of recognition that comes when a community realizes there's been a killer in its midst.
So now we have a major problem. Now we have two young ladies in the same apartment complex have been found murdered. The media has now been involved.
Be careful letting them into your house. If there's some doubt at all, you feel nervous with the person that may be coming to your door, don't hesitate, call 911.
Everybody's in uproar, everybody in a panic.
The city was on edge, you know, just fear all over the whole city.
It was scary. It was scary. I can remember calling some friends that I know on that side of town and say, hey, be careful.
Investigators say they need more information quickly. Young women were murdered in the same apartment complex, and their killer is still out there somewhere.
Minutes before Brandy Henderson was murdered at the Lake Apartments, she had been on the phone with her cousin George Burrell.
She said, hold on, somebody's at the door. And I heard her in the background saying, just make sure you lock the door behind you.
The day after the murder, George says he stops over at a neighbor's apartment.
As I walked in, to my left sat Henry Wallace, watching the TV. I had seen Henry Wallace at Brandy and her boyfriend's house. I had met him one time.
By daylight, detectives were back at the Lake Apartments with another murder on their hands.
The news came on. So we started watching the news, and it was about Brandy's murder.
Investigators say whoever killed these women was cold-bloodedly calm, spending a lot of time in each of their apartments.
I felt this on my shoulder. I felt a pat, like, you know, I'm so sorry. And he was looking at the TV, watching Gurney go across the sidewalk with her body, and his eyes just glow. He was just glowing, like, just, you know, like amazed, like he was excited. And I could just see that in his eyes, like he was just fixed on the TV.
Brandy Henderson's 10-month-old baby was also attacked and left for dead.
And he's like, I'm so sorry, what happened to your cousin? And Henry said, she was always there with her baby by herself. When somebody come in, she would say, lock the door behind them. I had that flashback to when I was speaking to her, and she said, just make sure you lock the door behind you. And I knew at that moment that it was him. I said, oh my word, he killed her.
George says he immediately told a police officer about his suspicion, but he says the officer blew him off.
By then, they knew that they had a serial killer on their hands, and they needed to find him quickly, but they didn't find him quickly enough.
As they're processing all of this with Betty Jean and Brandy Henderson being murdered at the Lakes Apartments, one more person is found murdered about a mile away, and her name is Deborah Ann Slaughter.
She loved to laugh. She had a very contagious laugh. She also had a beautiful voice. She and I both grew up singing in church together. I remember Boys to Men came on the radio singing The End of the Road. I just remember us going, you know, to the end of the road, and I can't let go.
That was the last time we sung together.
Deborah Slaughter lived in the Glen Hollow apartments, which were the same apartments that Audrey Spain lived in.
Henry Wallace had also lived at Glen Hollow at one time, and Deborah worked at the Bojangles, same place where Henry Wallace worked.
And my mother did give us warnings. Her exact words is, there's this serial killer in Charlotte, and I need y'all to be careful. And I would say to Deborah all the time, be careful. I always told her to be careful. But Deborah was a tough person, and she just wasn't scared of anything.
It was this last Thursday the bodies of Brandy Henderson and Betty Jean Balcom were discovered. 2 days later, Deborah Slaughter was found just a mile away.
At some point after letting this man into her home, Deborah Slaughter comes to a horrifying realization.
Once his attack was on, Deborah Slaughter made the connection between the recent murders. At that point, she said, "You're him." So Deborah did fight because Deborah knew that she was going to die.
Deborah Slaughter's case was much more violent than any of the other victims, and you could tell that there was a big struggle inside the home. She fought for her life.
Lovey Slaughter sees it every time she closes her eyes, her daughter's body lying on the dining room floor of her apartment.
When she knocked on the door just kind of pushed open, and she walked in.
And when I opened the door and saw her laid on that floor,
next thing I know, I look up and I see 2 firefighters bringing my mother down the stairs, and she's crying, and the first thing she said is, "Deborah's gone." She said she's gone.
You've got, oh, this person was strangled here, this person was strangled here, this person was strangled here. Huh.
Tonight, police aren't taking any chances at all.
Looking back,
The killer is out there somewhere.
for myself, as a reporter, I keep thinking, why didn't we start putting 2 and 2 together?
Go ahead, stop.
Then you have the police who are trained to do these kind of things. Why didn't they do it?
Look closely. Police say this is the face of a serial killer.
Who is this man who has confessed to the murders?
Once I touched him, so it was out of my control. It was out of my hands. So I couldn't stop it. There was no way I could stop it.
We have a possible serial killer working in the shadows.
And somebody is killing young black women. All black women in their 20s, all strangled to death in their own home.
There's some kind of a bold demon here, one like never before.
He's hiding in plain sight, and he's doing it very cleverly. He fools everybody.
He portrayed himself as the big brother, as the good friend.
and I remember him telling me, "It's gonna be okay, she's gonna come back."
He hugged me. He knew he had killed her.
So he kind of walked into their life knowing that at some point he's going to take their lives.
I didn't want to, but something or somebody was taking over my body.
He writes a name, then a second name, then a third name, but he keeps going.
He was talking about killing women like you're in some sort of boring book club.
The general tone in Charlotte was, why didn't you guys figure this out earlier?
Saying that they didn't prioritize these murders because the victims were black women.
You guys blew it. How could you miss this?
It was this last Thursday the bodies of Brandy Henderson and Betty Jean Balcom were discovered. 2 days later, Deborah Slaughter was found just a mile away.
Investigators have now contacted the FBI trying to set up a profile of the killer.
Use caution, be careful, and think before you open the door. We don't have a significant break anywhere in the case. We're still hoping that somebody may come forward with some information.
Charlotte police are desperate to find this killer. They do get something to work with from Brandy Henderson's boyfriend, Lamar.
We asked him who would Brandy allow into the home without any problem. And he said Henry Wallace.
Once the detective on Brandy Henderson's case got the names of who she would have let into the apartment, he went to see if any of them had any criminal history. Henry Wallace did. He had a misdemeanor larceny charge, and there was a mugshot of Henry Wallace.
That's when Detective James Stansberry, who's been investigating the Vanessa Mack case, walks into the room.
He comes in and he sees the photograph of Henry Wallace. In that mugshot, Henry Wallace is wearing a hoop cross earring in his ear.
I looked at the photograph and something hit me.
The detective remembers that from the ATM on Vanessa Mack's case.
I saw the earring with the cross.
And that's similar to the same earring that we saw on the picture of Henry Wallace's arrest photo.
I see this and say, we may have something here.
Investigators hope this car stolen from Balcom spawns new leads.
Betty Jean's car is found across the street from the crime scene, Nissan Pulsar, and that was the biggest break that they've had to date, which was inevitably what led them to their suspect.
They hit a jackpot near the trunk area of that car where they found a palm print. That palm print matched someone who was already in the system.
That palm print came back to Henry Louis Wallace.
So now we're going to look for the person, Henry Louis Wallace.
March 12, 1994, around 2 in the afternoon, Deborah Slaughter's body is found. 3 hours later, police locate Henry Wallace and place him under arrest.
And when the cops came in, he had bathroom door shut. And my bathroom door shut. Hiding in there? Hiding in there.
Initially, he is not giving up the goods.
The police sent in literally teams of detectives trying to get him to talk. He was like, I don't know what you're talking about. They sent in 2 more. I don't know what you're talking about. Enter Detective Tony Rice.
Tony Rice goes into the room and started to talk to Henry.
And he said, Henry, you mind if we just say a little prayer together? And he actually held Henry's hand and said a prayer.
After the prayer, then Tony said, well, now, can you tell me about what happened?
Henry said, give me a piece of paper. And he started writing down all the names of the women.
He writes a name, then a second name, then a third name, and these are victims that police had already suspected him of murdering. But Henry Wallace keeps going. Another name, another name, another name. A total of 10 victims. Charlotte police are stunned.
That was the first the police knew of the depth of how many people he had killed.
Henry, if you would, go ahead and just talk up for me and state your full name. Henry Louis Wallace.
The police decided to record his confessions.
Shauna Hawk, I really didn't have any intentions of doing what I did to Shauna. I stopped by to see Shauna one day, and she gave me a hug. And when she gave me a hug, I had her real close, and I said, I want you to have sex with me. She said, you're joking, right? I said, no, I'm not. It's not a joke.
He gave a full confession. That's very unusual. Many of them deny it to their dying day, so to speak. But Henry Wallace didn't.
I told her to get dressed. I took her to the bathroom. That's where I maneuvered the chokehold on her. And until she passed out, and I filled the bathtub with water and placed her in it.
Coldest thing I ever heard in my life. He was talking about killing women like you're in some sort of boring book club.
Henry Wallace admits he raped each of his victims before killing them, and usually robbed them.
But what's really unusual is that Henry Wallace knew his victims, and they knew him.
That's what's different. He knew them, and he had to know them. He couldn't kill a stranger, he said.
I would always hear the voices of the people that I killed. I would always see them. I would always see a shadow of them. I would always hear their voices. I would always hear the, like, laughter from them.
Shauna Hawk's mother, Dee Sumter, says that Henry Wallace actually showed up at Shauna's wake.
I'm thinking, this is some kind of a bold demon here, one like never before. Had the literal gall to show up at a service for someone that he knew he personally killed.
The thing that makes my blood run cold and just send shock shivers up and down my spine is the fact that I saw him after Shauna was murdered, and he expressed his condolences, and he hugged me, told me how sorry he was.
And he knew he had killed her.
I wanted to tell her so bad, Dee, I killed your daughter. But I was so scared. I was so scared. And I couldn't do it.
I mean, to be hugged by your child's murderer, showing up and sending his sympathies, that is some cold, calculated stuff going on right there.
We begin to get a bit of a portrait of Henry Wallace emerging from the photos shown in court.
He had many strengths in growing up. People liked him, and he was social.
Henry was a great person, very nice guy, got along well with everyone.
Yearbook photos and schoolmates who spent time with him.
But he also had some, obviously, very lethal problems.
He would have had every opportunity in the world with any of us. He could have easily gotten any of us, but he didn't.
Was there satisfaction in that for you? I didn't want to, but something or somebody was taking over my body, and I couldn't stop, even when I tried to stop.
Police say this is the face of a serial killer, a man who choked the life out of neighbors and co-workers. His name is Henry Louis Wallace.
Henry Wallace was born and raised in Barnwell, South Carolina, a small town about 3 hours south of Charlotte.
Before he became a serial killer, Henry Wallace was a fast food manager who had served in the Navy, had been married, and then divorced.
The news of his arrest shocked his hometown.
I still have a hard time believing now that it was
Me too.
our Henry.
Former classmates and the high school yearbook seemed to portray a completely different image than that of a cold-blooded killer.
Henry was a great person, very nice guy.
He was a good guy. He was fun. He had the biggest smile, the biggest personality, always happy. You know, he was the first male cheerleader we ever had. I would have never guessed in a million years that Henry had any kind of issues where he would do what he's done. Never in a million years.
He would be the person who's responsible for more deaths in Mecklenburg, Charlotte, Mecklenburg than any other person that we've came in contact with.
I think the community was truly stunned. Those kinds of cases didn't happen here. Charlotte wasn't the kind of place where we would have a serial killer.
After Henry confessed to all of the murders that we believe he did in North Carolina, we began to formulate how are we going to tell the public.
Information indicates that this person was responsible for the murder of 10 women in Charlotte.
When we made the announcement, the city ate us alive. The media ate us alive.
I do remember the police coming out and saying, we have a serial killer, but you know what? Our officers did a great job.
The investigators worked tremendously hard and did an excellent job on the investigation of all of these 10 cases. We're sorry that we did not get him identified earlier. Had we done that, then we maybe could have saved the lives of some of these women.
The general tone in Charlotte was, why didn't you guys figure this out earlier?
The community became outraged.
The police was well aware of this a long time ago.
There were some in the community who criticized the Charlotte police, saying that they didn't prioritize these murders because the victims were black women.
I sat and just cried in my heart and outside because I wanted that same energy and effort to be extended to my child.
There was not a level of caring. This is where the racial disparity comes in.
We covered Dee, we covered her press conferences. One of the things that she made everyone think about and talk about was if these had been white women who were dying in South Charlotte, each killing would have been a huge story.
Race is always a factor in criminal investigations. Until America sees that it is not a factor or we have to mention it, do an interview, race is always going to be a factor.
All these cases were professionally and competently handled. There was nothing given short shrift.
One of the other stunning aspects of this case was how well Henry Wallace knew most of his victims.
And it seems that fast food restaurants are the common thread that bind Wallace to most of his alleged victims.
Everything was right here all along. It's been right here. And they've done everything except look right here.
Obvious connections. There's that word again, connecting the dots. In my humble opinion, blatantly ignored.
It was like, you guys blew it. How could you miss this?
It's not that we missed this, it's just that we were overwhelmed with the cases.
During that 2-year period that he was killing people, there were approximately 300 people murdered.
All of those cases were on desks of 6 homicide detectives in the 90s. We didn't have the technology. We definitely didn't have the manpower, and we definitely didn't have the resources.
When Henry Wallace confessed to police, he listed names of people that investigators didn't even know had been murdered.
Well, there is one name in particular on that list that I am certain wasn't on their radar at all, and that is Valencia Jumper.
Investigators say Valencia Jumper died in her third-floor apartment. They say this also appears to be the unit where the fire started.
Valencia Jumper came to Charlotte. She was a student at Johnson C. Smith University.
Henry Wallace knew Valencia's sister. That was their connection.
She was found in a house that had caught fire. That didn't fit any patterns before or after.
It was ruled that maybe she was out drinking with her friends and had too much to drink, put a pot of beans on the stove to eat, and the fire engulfed the apartment.
Investigators say they suspect Valencia Jumper was sleeping when the fire in her third-floor apartment broke out. They say a pot left on her stove started the fire.
I went into the kitchen and I opened a can of pork and beans or something, and I put it in a pot, put it on the stove, and I turned the stove on high.
He set the whole scene up that it looked like she fell asleep while she was cooking.
And I went to her kitchen. I noticed there was a bottle of rum, 151, and I poured the rum all over her body.
He considered her to be his little sister.
There were so many things in this case that were missed by various people. The only people who didn't miss the signs were her family. And her family fought tooth and nail to say this was not an accidental fire.
After Henry confessed, the medical examiner started re-examining the facts in that case. And one of the things that stood out was there was no soot or ash or anything in her throat where she breathed in smoke.
It should have been ruled that she was dead before the fire started. This case haunts me probably the most because of mistakes that were made, that had they not been made, Henry Wallace would have been charged then. And she was victim number 5. We wouldn't have had 5 more.
Henry Wallace's confession leaves veteran law enforcement shocked and almost caught off guard. But the next thing he does is remarkable. He takes the police on a field trip.
I knew this day was coming. I mean, I knew and I wanted it to come. And there have been several times during the actual crime that I was committing, I wanted to die. I ruined everything, man.
Henry Louis Wallace knew all of his victims, and they felt comfortable with him because he portrayed himself as the big brother, as the good friend.
Always very polite. It's the only male neighbor that I would even let in when my boyfriend wasn't at home. I mean, he was a friend. I trusted him.
Henry was like the perfect human predator.
So he kind of walked into their life knowing that at some point he's going to take their lives.
You never realized what Henry was all about. And by the time you did, it was too late.
If you would go ahead and start with the first name that you put on your list there. Carolyn Love, is it?
Caroline Love.
Where did you meet Carolyn?
Caroline, I met her through my girlfriend's wedding.
And so we go to the board and we're looking for certain names, and Carolina Love name is not on the homicide board. So why is this name on the list?
Caroline Love was a woman that went missing in June of '92. She was a friend of Wallace's girlfriend at the time.
Remember, Shauna Hawk and Caroline Love were friends and they were co-workers.
We talked to Henry and he was very forthcoming, and he gave us a lot of information.
I dumped her body on the left side near where a little ditch kind of led from the highway back into the woods.
You think you could find it again?
I know I could.
And so we decided to find Carolina Love. We put Henry in the back of the van, and he directed us out to this remote area of the county to a field.
The investigators were told exactly where to look for another victim in this bizarre case.
And it was the skeletal remains of Caroline Love.
That tells the cops that this guy is for real. He's a killer because he's the only person who's going to know this.
We have to tell the public that this case was not a missing person, it is now a homicide.
Painful. I cried all yesterday, I cried all last night.
Caroline's family is even more devastated. This is the same man that went with Caroline's sister, Kathy, to file a missing persons report.
Caroline's niece, Sarah, was only 8 years old when her aunt went missing. And who comforted her during that time? Henry Wallace.
Then I remember being in her room with him and sitting on his lap. And I remember being sad and crying. And I remember him telling me, it's gonna be okay, she's gonna come back.
The same day that Henry is consoling Sarah, the police arrive to speak with Caroline's family. They have no idea the killer is in their midst, listening to every word.
And in talking to him, he remembered us talking to Caroline Love's family about her having an orange jumpsuit from Bojangles. He said after hearing that conversation, he decided to go back and remove that orange jumpsuit from her, because if we were looking for it, it would be easily seen by an aerial helicopter or somebody's walking by.
He returned to her body disposal site, which was outside, numerous times.
I went back a couple of times since then, so I would remember where the body was.
Caroline's family, who had held out hope for so long about the fate of their loved one, now have to face the cruel reality that her remains have been found.
You told me she would come back, but you didn't tell me she would come back like that. I mean, we didn't have anything to go back to. Her body was bones.
Back in the interrogation room, detectives ask one final question.
Is there anything else you can remember, Henry? That's it.
Anybody else that you can think of in Charlotte or anywhere else that anything like this has ever happened to you before? You lived in South Carolina with your mom. Anything there that you remember?
One person.
Tell us about her.
Her name was Shanda Bethay. They called her Shan.
Henry Wallace confesses to police that he killed 18-year-old Tashanda Bethay in 1990 in his hometown of Barnwell, South Carolina. It's believed that Tashanda was his first victim.
She left home about 5 o'clock on the 19th, and they reported her missing on the 20th because she didn't return home.
She was walking one day. I picked her up, and I told her that we were going out to get some pot. And I pulled off to the side of the road into the ravine area.
Tashanda's body was found 2 weeks later by people fishing in a local pond.
The autopsy results show that she was strangled.
A few days later, Henry Wallace is brought in for questioning.
He was a very strong suspect, but we had nothing on him. He covered his alibis good.
I was questioned about her death, but I did not.
After literally getting away with murder, Henry Wallace moved to North Carolina, where he would kill again and again and again.
It's absolutely devastating. You sitting there thinking the worst, hoping for the best. And that's exactly what these relatives were doing. And unfortunately, it was not a good ending.
Henry Wallace, dubbed by some in the media as the Taco Bell Strangler, confesses to killing 11 women. But the question remains, why?
Two of the FBI's most respected mind hunters want to know what's inside Henry Wallace's mind.
He had some obviously very lethal problems.
They sit him down for interviews and put it all on videotape.
It was out of my control.
For years, the FBI has been developing behavioral profiling techniques. And there's a woman named Ann Burgess, a professor and author from Boston College, who has helped them.
Until we understand what's going on in the mind of the criminal, we're going to have more and more victims.
She was one of the few women in the FBI at the time doing that work, and I thought it was time to get her story out there. So after a little bit of convincing, she agreed to write this book, A Killer by Design. Wallace is featured in the book because he was a really interesting case.
Henry Wallace was, not that we would call him atypical, but certainly very different from some of the others. People liked him, and he was social.
Burgess was tapped by Henry Wallace's defense team to do an analysis on his mind.
The jury was to decide whether he deserved death or whether he deserved life. They just asked us to do a background and present what we thought.
She and retired FBI agent Robert Ressler visited Wallace inside the jail and conducted interviews. All of it was put on videotape.
The footage was provided exclusively to ABC News 2020.
Henry Wallace was quite open in what he talked about. He had many strengths in growing up, but he also had some obviously very lethal problems.
Do you understand any of this any better since you had a chance to kind of reflect on it?
Within this shell, there are two people. One person being a chameleon. He will adapt to anything, any environment, any situation, and he's a very well respected, very well liked person. He almost lures the women in for the other person.
So he had good Henry and bad Henry. Good Henry was a friendly person that made friends very easily, dated women very easily.
But then he said the bad Henry would come out, the monster, so to speak. He came out, he was angry, he had to kill them. Why he couldn't stay good Henry for a long time, we don't know, but he just couldn't.
But what's generating the anger?
Experiences in the past.
One of the reasons that Wallace points to for committing his crimes is he did have a really tough upbringing.
Henry tells them that when he was a child, he was molested. He also reveals that he and his mother, when he was growing up, had an extremely volatile relationship.
I was terrified of my mother. Terrified. From the beatings.
Henry also described being constantly teased about being a cheerleader and other things.
He was teased about his size, he was teased about his color.
Wallace was trying to reshape this really terrible childhood that he had by taking out his aggressions on people that he knew as if that was a replacement for the bad situations of his past.
He married his high school sweetheart, this prom photo capturing them in happier times.
But the marriage didn't last long and ended right before he moved to Charlotte.
It all starts collapsing after the wife left him.
I grew to hate her very much. And there's still a lot of hatred inside for her. And I think that had I lived in South Carolina and not in Charlotte, that she would probably be one of the victims.
Wallace did think about killing his wife, but he was not able to actually go through with it.
I think that the majority of the victims reminded me of her in some way. Or when the murder and rape was taking place, who I was seeing was her and not the victim.
After his marriage dissolved, then Henry had to move back in with his mother.
That really kind of was the straw that broke it all down. And that's when he started into his murderous behavior.
My mom was very violent, and I think more than, other than a mate in these women, I was looking for a mother as well, or traits of my mother. And they were there, and all of them.
Henry Wallace was danger disguised as a friend, and his victims never saw him coming.
They felt comfortable with him because he portrayed himself as the big brother, as the good friend.
I think that was one of his motivations in a lot of these killings, was they were women he liked who didn't like him that way.
That's a more classic kind of a type of motive, if you will, for a serial killer.
One of the biggest questions for Burgess and Ressler was, how did Henry Wallace evade police for so long?
The only time that the police were concerned when the two murders occurred on the same day. That's when Barkham and Henderson.
Same day.
Yeah. That's when all of a sudden they started seeing connections and things that had happened 20 months ago.
You've got to do the victimology first, because they would have realized that they knew each other in some capacity, and that would have been a way to then zero in on Henry.
Burgess testified for the defense, and she told the jury that Wallace, while he was committing these murders, was in an alternate mental state.
I did feel that he was not in total control of his thoughts, that he was being controlled, if you will, by the obsession.
Henry Wallace was convicted of the rape and murder of 9 women.
I think we all knew what the verdict was going to be, guilt. So the real question was, does he live, does he die?
The jury recommended death. And again, I don't think anyone was terribly surprised.
It's such a sad case. It's not like you celebrate.
I just want people to not forget, you know, what happened to these girls in Charlotte, North Carolina. We don't want people to go around and hear the name Henry Wallace and not know who he is, you know, because, you know, he was a black serial killer that killed a lot of black women. I want the world to know what happened and that these girls' lives mattered.
Finally, there's justice. But there's one more victim of Henry Wallace's rampage. The sole survivor is now all grown up.
18-year-old Brandy Henderson strangled to death.
Brandy Henderson's 10-month-old baby was also attacked and left for dead.
Henry said he got mad and said, "You got to do something with this baby. You got to shut this baby up," because Tyrese was sitting right there beside her. He was pulling on his mom, on Brandy. So he took a pair of shorts and tied around his neck until he got quiet.
I think about Brandy's child often. How do you go on with your life? How does any loved one go on with their life when something this horrible happens?
The picture that we took of him at the hospital, it's like I still see that picture in my mind every day.
After he got out of the hospital, his father took him to Chicago. And when Tyrese was 5, his father passed away.
I'm still here. If it wasn't me reading these stories, I would have thought that I had died. So I'm like, reading these, well, I know this baby died. I know this. He survived? Are you freaking serious? He's well, he has a family, he's married, he's doing something with himself.
You know those Pop Rock candies? That's like him. That's exactly what I can describe him as. He's a ball of energy.
I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an entrepreneur. I try and be a great role model because I do have 3 sons.
He's been through a lot of things. He's had it rough.
He realized he never grieved for his mother, and he grew up without his mother's love.
I went through a whole grieving class. I wrote my mama a letter. I told her I was mad. I told her I was angry. I told her how much I missed her. I told her how sorry I was because I know that I wasn't doing the right things.
When I heard about his mother, inside I was crying, outside I was strong. I'm finding out more and more about the situation with his mother every day. I went and searched for it just to know, what type of woman she was and how it's instilled in him.
She was such a great mother. She would have done anything at all for him. Brandy told me that when she had Tyrese, that she felt like her life was complete.
They tell me that she was a great person. They say that she wanted the best for me. They're like, I was her masterpiece. It's like, I'm somebody's masterpiece. Like, that's a huge compliment for me.
I saw Tyrese when he was like 9 years old. We went to Chicago and visited him. But since then, since that time, I lost track. I feel guilty about it, but I just could not stay in contact with him because I knew he would have all these questions and I wasn't ready.
After 20 years, Brandy's cousin and close friend, George Burrell, is now reuniting with Brandy's son, Tyrese.
What's up, dog?
Oh, man.
What's up, old boy?
Oh, my gosh, man.
I've been in Charlotte.
Wow. Yes. And hello.
Liz, George,
nice to meet you,
Liz.
Liz.
Finally.
Man, it's good to see you.
You too. You getting old. You got
thank
gray
you.
hair. You got a gray beard.
See that?
Yeah.
The guilt, when she told me, come over and see me that night, and I didn't go, and then he came and killed me.
Yeah, man. Hey, look, as Brandy's son, listen, tell me how, as her son, my boy, you're not responsible for anything that happened to us. I also remember her life isn't the only life. It was also other victims and there's other family members who feel the same pain.
You healed, but you still got them scars.
Look at my neck, dog.
Man. I remember that, looking at you through the hospital door. Look, I'm shaking. Wow. That's how close, look at that, that's how close you came to not being here. Oh, my word. Wow. Your lips are still red from being strangled.
Yeah, and that was the main part. I'm like, that's why I say I'm the only survivor. Like, that's a survivor.
Yeah.
That little baby right there, like.
And that's you now.
Yeah, that's me now. Still with the tears and all, bro.
Wow.
At trial, Henry Wallace was found guilty of the assault on Tyrese.
It's like, why didn't I die? Truthfully, I wanted to die for a long time. As I started learning more that I'd be too selfish, she fought too hard to keep me alive. And that's why I didn't die. There's no time frame on grieving. There's no time frame on how long you can and can't miss somebody. But it's like, I'm a survivor.
Wallace was sentenced to death, but now he's asking a judge for a new trial.
For him to be here pleading for his life, not fair. It's not justice.
And I just believe it's time. It's time for us to finally see that end. It's 25 years this year that he was sentenced to death, and I'm ready for him to be executed.
I think he got an appropriate sentence, but North Carolina has not executed anyone in a very long time.
My goal now is to start a petition and let people sign that so that we can get an execution date and finally get this resolved.
I was determined that I wasn't going to hate him. You kind of have to let it go, otherwise it will consume you.
I don't feel hate for him now. I started journaling, and it really did help.
I forgave Henry years ago for the madness of what he did.
I don't harbor that hate for him, but I do think that justice should be served.
Audrey is buried in South Carolina. My dad donated an acre of land for a new cemetery, and Audrey was the first one buried in that cemetery.
She has a niece named Audrey Lynette Franklin. Part of her legacy will definitely continue, so we're excited about that.
She does have a son. His name is Eric Slaughter. He reminds me of Deborah a lot. I think she would be very proud of him and the progress that he has made in his life.
I just wanted mothers to come together and join our forces and our hearts. MAMO, Mothers of Murdered Offspring.
The whole point in MAMO being created was to make sure that Shauna's memory lived on.
Should have never happened. But it made us better detectives, and it made Charlotte Police Department a better homicide unit.
In a statement to 2020 about the Wallace investigation, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department says the detectives worked the cases as diligently as they would have any homicide case, with the race of the victim being irrelevant. In the aftermath of the murders, the department says it added staffing to the homicide unit and implemented regular mandatory meetings to better identify related cases.
You know, the guys in the homicide unit, I know them all from that time. It's just that they were put in a situation where you just couldn't win.
Listen to the families, because they are the voices of the victims.
I fight for my own breath sometimes. I fight to be here. If I had $1 for every time that I've been told, Miss Sumter, I know I'm gonna make it because you're making it. None of these young African-American ladies deserve to die. They were young ladies who deserve to have a bright future. And so, you know, my hope and prayer is that even though as tragic as this was, something positive will come out of it.
Pound for pound, one of the greatest true crime stories of all time.
This would turn out to be a notorious, surreal case.
A woman brutally murdered in cold blood.
Investigators at the time believed that Sherry Rasmussen was the victim of a burglary that had turned into her own murder.
As I walked in, there was blood.
She was literally clawing at the front door, trying to get out.
People were on edge during that era. And add to that, we were the serial killer capital of the world.
It's like being hit by a train. Just like being hit by a train. I don't usually talk about that day or that time.
How soon was it after the murder that your father and your mother started to think that maybe this wasn't a robbery?
I assumed it was going to be burglars, male burglars.
And there was another piece of evidence that caught the attention of investigators. A bite mark on Sherry's forearm.
A suspect that the LAPD could never have fathomed.
If you walk down Hollywood Boulevard, you can't help but notice the stars on the sidewalk, the glitter in the pavement, and you think to yourself, wow, this is Tinseltown. But it doesn't take long until you realize that there are deep cracks in that pavement, exposing a criminal element you could never have anticipated. And the case of Sherry Rasmussen was a rude awakening for anyone living in La La Land.
President Reagan in Los Angeles.
Today, the torch entered the City of Angels
for AIDS Walkathon in Hollywood.
It was 1986. A beautiful young nurse, only 3 months into her marriage, is brutally murdered in her own townhome.
As a television journalist, I've been reporting on true crime stories for decades on numerous outlets. And you think you're never going to be shocked anymore ever again? Well, this proved all that very wrong.
It was a huge story. It had all the elements, sex and betrayal and lies. It just gripped the nation.
It's definitely, pound for pound, one of the greatest true crime stories of all time.
Everything we always heard or was told about Aunt Sherry was about what a great person she was.
Tell me about your sister.
She was the middle sister, and she was a clown. If everything got too serious, she would make everybody laugh.
She had a very unique little giggle.
Uncle John and Aunt Sherry are spending Christmas with Rachel on her first Christmas.
Sherry was all about family. Sherry was our glue. She kept us all together.
From a young age, Sherry, the middle child with that infectious giggle, seemed mature beyond her years, according to her sisters, Connie and Teresa. She leapfrogged from the 8th grade into high school, and Sherry graduated early at the age of just 16 and enrolled in nursing school.
She had certainly an interest in caring for other people.
By the time she was 21, Sherry was fearless and determined, and she moved from her hometown of Tucson, Arizona to Los Angeles.
When she passed away, she was the director of critical care at the Glendale Adventist Hospital.
When I think of Sherry, I think of her kindness and her generosity.
Sherry's father, Nels, who was a dentist, had encouraged her to enroll in medical school to become a doctor, but she had other plans in mind.
Sherry always wanted to have a family and a husband and children.
In the spring of 1984, Sherry met a young engineer named John Rutten.
John Rutten was a tall, handsome, bright, athletic young man from San Diego, California.
Sherry was so tall, she often had difficulty finding guys who weren't intimidated by someone with her stature. And I know that John was just taken with her.
Sherry and John were very happy together. Sherry was always smiling and laughing and happy.
They settled into Sherry's condo in Van Nuys, and in November 1985, the couple got married.
It was a joyous celebration. You could tell that they were in love.
She was just beginning her life. She'd met the man of her dreams, and she had a great job, and she was doing very well, and it was all coming together. 3 months later, and now it was all gone.
February 24, 1986. John had just returned home from work, and as he's walking up the steps into the townhome, the door is ajar. He walks into the townhome and sees his gorgeous bride dead in a pool of blood on the living room floor. He calls 911.
I was patrolling and I got a call to Balboa Boulevard.
Veteran LAPD patrol officer Rodney Forrest was one of the first cops to arrive at the scene.
The call was a death investigation. I thought that was particularly interesting. Why a murder in a kind of upscale part of town?
When Forrest and his partner got there, they were met with a grim warning from paramedics.
Somebody said, "You're not going to be prepared for what's in there." And I'm thinking, well, I've seen it all, so let's go see. Oh, wow. Well, this brings back memories. It's kind of an eerie feeling to be here after 30 plus, almost 40 years. As I walked in, I saw Sherry Rasmussen on the ground. She had been covered with a towel, and one of the paramedics raised the towel for me to see her face, and she had considerable trauma to her face, and there was blood. I thought after that, this is actually a murder.
At that point, Officer Forrest called the LAPD's Van Nuys division to notify the homicide unit, which took over the investigation.
It's a horribly violent crime. Bruises all over her body. The struggle ensued for quite some time.
My partner went upstairs, checked the upper floor for any suspects, and there were no suspects still around.
Investigators knew that something catastrophic had happened to Miss Rasmussen.
You think, given the ferocity of that fight, that somebody would have heard something.
You would think it was a heck of a fight. I mean, Sherry fought for her life, literally.
That night, news of Sherry's murder reached her family in Tucson.
I'll probably never forget it, unfortunately. My dad called me to tell me that Sherry was dead. And I was like, I certainly didn't believe it.
Beyond the pale.
Yeah. I was like, no, what are you talking about? That's not true. And he said, no, it is. And then I started screaming.
In the wake of Sherry's murder, her family struggled to understand what had happened. Could this be the result of the rampant violence?
For myself, as a reporter in Los Angeles, the 80s was the wild, wild west. Turn on the TV and what are you hearing about? Violent crime.
Crime running unchecked, the police seemingly unable to stop it. That frustration reached the breaking point in one neighborhood in Los Angeles.
Anyone that worked in the city of Los Angeles, they knew that they were going to have their hands filled.
There are more than 100 street gangs in Los Angeles.
It was out of control.
People were on edge during that era. And add to that, we were the serial killer capital of the world.
The Night Stalker killer.
Strangled, tortured bodies were found sprawled on hillsides.
By 1986, the homicide rate in Los Angeles had reached alarming levels. So when Sherry Rasmussen was murdered inside this apartment, it sent neighbors into a panic.
It was a dark period in our history. People were terrified to leave their homes.
Residents bought guns, learned martial arts.
People had bought up every single burglar alarm in the city, and went to the LA County dog pound and literally adopted every single dog for watchdogs.
The home invasion murder, the one similar to Sherry's, is going to cause a lot of fear in the community.
People were nervous. It was certainly a shock for me.
Alan Tarski lived across the corridor from Sherry, but he says he wasn't home at the time of the murder.
I had come back to work probably 5:45 in the evening, and it was shortly after that that the madness started. I do remember there was electronic stereo equipment
right here that I saw when I came in. And that suggested to me that it was possibly a burglary, and a burglary interrupted. I put this together with the stereo equipment stacked over here, and it seemed to me that she could have struggled with the burglar, and she obviously lost that fight.
Sherry's newer model BMW was taken. Her purse was taken.
The Rasmussen crime scene had all the makings of something police call a hot prowl, a home invasion.
Investigators at the time very much believed that Sherry Rasmussen was the victim of a burglary that had turned into her own murder. Based on what investigators could see at the time, it appeared as though Sherry Rasmussen was working at her dining room table on the second level of her condominium when the intruder came in through the front door.
She had ligature marks on her wrists, indicating at some point someone had tied her up.
All over the place in these pictures, you see some of the implements that were used to hit Sherry.
Right.
The vase that was smashed over her head.
The shards had blood on them.
The assailant or assailants were grabbing at anything they could find to make sure this woman didn't breathe another breath.
Her fingernails were left broken at the front door.
Because she was literally clawing at the front door.
Trying to get out.
But before Sherry could escape, she was shot, police say, at point-blank range.
The bullets indicated that a .38 revolver had been used.
It was basically an execution.
Not a single neighbor heard a gunshot, and ballistics tests showed that it appeared the assailant had used that quilt over the barrel of the gun as a silencer.
And there was another piece of evidence that caught the attention of investigators. A bite mark on Sherry's forearm.
They took the sample in an abundance of caution because if there was blood there on that bite mark, it could be possible for blood typing analysis to be done.
I learned later about the bite mark that led into my curiosity of why there was a bite mark on her arm. I had no clue. It kind of reinforced what I was thinking when I initially got there. There was something more than I originally saw.
Former patrol officer Forrest, who wasn't part of the investigation, says to him, the crime scene didn't jibe with the burglary theory.
I thought to myself, this is a burglary? Burglars don't usually pick a place 5 condos from the street. They want to get away. They pick something next to the street. They don't want to be seen. It's just strange that they would pick this place.
Officer Forrest says he was also taken by the demeanor of Sherry's husband.
I noticed John Rutten. He was sitting at the table and he seemed to be sobbing. My reaction was his sobbing, his crying should have been more extreme with his wife laying there on the floor dead. I guess people grieve in different ways.
Did you see John at any point directly after the murder?
We saw him at the Van Nuys police station, and I do remember that he didn't have any marks on him. That's the first thing you look at for any kind of domestic violence. So,
even though he was your brother-in-law, even though you liked him,
yes.
The first thing you did when you saw him is sort of give him a visual inspection, a look over.
Yes.
Did you talk?
We weren't allowed to talk to him. They were keeping everybody separated.
Because the first suspect in murders like this typically is. Rutten wasn't permitted to speak with Sherry's family, but on the night of the murder, he sat down with investigators at the LAPD's Van Nuys station.
You didn't harm your wife, did you, John?
The question for investigators is, was he telling them everything they needed to know to catch a killer? So you and Sherry were living here in Southern California together.
Yes.
How was that?
It was fun. Actually, we also gained Teresa, so all three of us were in a mobile home together at Loma Linda.
Oh, wow. The 3 daughters. That must have made your dad so happy.
Yeah. I've kept a lot of Sherry's clothes. And
Now it's all back in style, right?
The 1980s are all coming back. I remember her telling me that she had met John.
What was your impression of him once you met him?
He was very likable. They made a really a cute couple. They were both tall, thin, athletic, both driven with their careers.
It was a whirlwind romance, and within a year, the two were married. And did she seem like she had it all?
Yes, she had a new job that she enjoyed, just got married. She was a new aunt. We were really looking forward to the future.
Family was just so important to her, and you can really see that in the photos and just how happy everyone was together.
Sherry really loved Christmas.
Here's Aunt Sherry.
It was one of her favorite holidays.
Here's John holding his baby niece, Rachel.
Everybody here thinks there's going to be a baby rotten pretty soon. I think they better talk to Sherry.
This would be Sherry's last Christmas.
Sherry's now showing why she's a leader of nurses.
Just 2 months later, Sherry and John's love story came to a tragic and sudden end. And in the aftermath of her murder, questions would linger.
When you're going through this process, you're pretty much helpless because you have no control. I mean, the information you get is what they give you.
Nels Rasmussen was determined to find out what really happened to his daughter.
And so were the police, who wanted answers. On the night of the murder, Detective Lyle Mayer questioned a very emotional John Rutten on what he knew about the day Sherry was killed.
She had everything going. I mean,
Hey, so do you, buddy. Hey, John, for a couple of minutes, I need you to be tough for me, buddy.
Investigators looked at every possible direction. Of course, they looked at John.
What was the first thing you saw?
well, I saw Sherry lying on, I mean, it's right in front of me when I walked in the door. I saw her lying on the ground. I knew right away that she was dead.
He was shaken up that evening. He did his best to give an interview that helped investigators.
At one point, Detective Mayer asked Rutten a very difficult question.
You didn't harm your wife, did you, John?
No, I didn't. Good.
You didn't harm your wife. Okay, very good.
John Rutten agreed to do a polygraph examination, and the results came back inconclusive. But he had a rock-solid alibi.
He was at work that day. He'd left work, he had stopped and picked up his dry cleaning, and then came back between 6 and 7 p.m. and found his wife murdered in the living room area of the house.
Detective Mayer believed the murder had happened in the early morning hours after Rutten had already left for work.
When I left, she was in bed, but she was awake.
What time did you leave for work?
7:20 is when I left.
What time did you get to work this morning?
I got to work about 10 to 8.
In the eyes of Lyle Mayer, the lead detective, John Rutten was legitimately and seriously a grieving husband. They didn't feel he was hiding anything, and as far as they were concerned, he was not a suspect, and they told him so.
I'm usually a pretty good judge of character, but I'm fairly certain that you have absolutely nothing to do with this. Okay?
Mayer basically made a decision that night based on the evidence that he saw at the crime scene that this was a burglary gone wrong.
I believe your house was burglarized today. Once those persons, or that person, or whoever was inside, I believe they were trying to steal your stereo and probably some other items.
Why would they do anything to her? Why wouldn't they just run?
I don't know, John. I don't know. John, things happen, okay? I think Sherry came down the stairs, and I think she surprised him, and she was hurt. She was shot.
Oh, God.
And Detective Mayer was so convinced he'd solve the case, he even told John Rutten.
John, I know how you feel, I know what you're going through, but we're gonna catch these persons, or this person, all right? You gotta have a little faith in me, but we're very successful at what we do. Very, very successful.
At this point, detectives don't have a single witness. They have no murder weapon. They have no fingerprints. For even seasoned detectives, there's a lot of work ahead.
But there would soon be a break in the case. These are sketches that were LAPD issued.
Right.
Would another home invasion in the same neighborhood lead investigators to Sherry's killers?
They look like they're from Charlie's Angels. I know. They're almost on different parts of the country, but you had almost the same haircut.
I know. I was still in the stage of shock that this could happen to my sister.
It's like being hit by a train, just like being hit by a train. I'm sorry. I don't usually talk about that day or that time.
Less than a week after Sherry Rasmussen's murder, her loved ones said their painful goodbyes. A heartbroken John Rutten addressed family and friends.
When I saw John at the memorial, he was just ashen. He couldn't stop walking in circles and was just shaking.
And I want you to know that Sherry was the best professional in the world. She was the best wife that anybody could ever have. And she was the best sister, daughter. She wanted to make everybody happy.
You have to understand that was the love of his life. And trying to deal with that grief is devastating.
Back then, investigators wasted no time theorizing what they think happened to Sherry Rasmussen.
They looked at the crime scene. It looked like a burglary, smelled like a burglary.
Not long after Sherry's murder, investigators jump on a new lead. There's been another burglary here in this same Van Nuys neighborhood with a similar MO.
That burglary was interrupted by a woman coming home, seeing two men in her house, one of whom had a gun, and they fled, and witness sketches were produced of those suspects.
These are sketches that were LAPD issued.
Right. These composites were attached to this case. They started to utilize that sketch in this case to see if the persons that were responsible for Sherry's death were the same people that were depicted in that sketch.
Were they ever arrested? Were they ever found?
No, it might as well have been me and you.
Despite these suspects, there was literally nothing that could tie anyone directly to the murder of Sherry Rasmussen.
On the surface, it appeared to be a burglary gone wrong, but not everyone was convinced. How soon was it after the murder that your father and your mother started to think that maybe this wasn't a robbery, like police were saying?
The very day we went to the Van Nuys Police Department.
That first day?
It didn't make sense that they wouldn't take anything other than the car and yet fight with her to the extent of her death.
Sherry's father, Nels, believed that there was another reason behind the murder because he says Sherry told him about a series of disturbing events in the weeks and months leading up to her death.
My father told the police about an incident of a nurse that didn't get promoted, and then she was upset with Sherry, and then so she sort of got into an argument with Sherry.
She felt that she had damage to her car, so when Sherry was murdered, that certainly came up to the forefront of my dad's mind that maybe that conflict accelerated.
According to family members, there was another woman who raised alarm bells for her, an ex-girlfriend of John Rutten.
She had come to Sherry's office after they were engaged. And I think she was sort of provocatively dressed and said to Sherry, when this marriage fails, I'll be waiting to pick up the pieces. And Sherry said, don't worry, we won't be needing your services.
Just about a month before the murder, there was an even more disturbing encounter that Sherry, again, told her parents about. She was home getting ready for work and heard something downstairs and went downstairs and found John's ex-girlfriend standing in the living room, and Sherry told her to get out and not come back.
In the days leading up to the murder, Nell said Sherry confided in him that she was being followed by someone who she described as having piercing eyes.
Sherry never disclosed a name for the ex-girlfriend. It would have been nice had we had that, because we would have shared that with the detectives.
Nels claims that he told the original detectives about the alleged incidents involving an ex-girlfriend of Rutten.
One of the original detectives in this case told me personally they had never heard any of those alleged incidents, and none of them were entered into the official case record known as the murder book.
The single most important document in an LAPD homicide investigation is the murder book, and it's basically the place where any investigative work that is conducted, any step that is performed, everything needs to be committed to writing. And the reason that it's so important is that homicide is obviously a case with no statute of limitations.
Nels Rasmussen told me that he had been telling them for years about an ex-girlfriend of John's. When exactly that conversation occurred, he could not tell me, but I believe that it occurred.
But on the night of the murder, John Rutten told Detective Mayer that he didn't know anyone who might want to harm Sherry.
She's not having any problems with an ex-boyfriend or you with an ex-girlfriend?
No.
Has anybody been hitting on her, or following her home, or anything like that at all?
I would say nothing out of the ordinary. I don't think there was anything out of the ordinary.
But Rutten says in the days and weeks following the murder, he did tell investigators about an ex-girlfriend, the same one Nell says he mentioned to police. Rutten says he never brought it up in his recorded interview with Detective Mayer because he never considered her a girlfriend. And it never crossed his mind that she could have been involved with Sherry's murder. 2020 reached out to Detective Mayer for a response to the allegations raised by Sherry's family and her husband, but he did not respond. 2020 also reached out to the LAPD regarding those same allegations, and they declined to comment.
I had come to the conclusion in my mind that it was never going to be solved, and it was something that I would have to deal with, the unknowing of what happened.
With zero suspects, Sherry's homicide investigation was heading toward cold case purgatory.
But years later, with brand new technology and a fresh set of eyes, investigators take another look at the bite mark that was on Sherry's forearm.
And could that be the key that unlocks the mystery of the murder of Sherry Rasmussen?
Sitting on you because you can't move because it's still unresolved.
When Sherry was murdered, my grandfather, he was struggling with the fact that they were unable to find the murderer.
It ate at my dad. As a father, you think, your job is to protect your children. And he felt he had failed that.
Sherry's father, the late Nels Rasmussen, gave this interview shortly before his own death in 2020.
It's probably difficult for people that know me that I hang on the way I do, but I'm learning every day how to deal with this. And I still don't have all the answers. I probably never will.
In 1991, Lyle Mayer, who's the lead detective on the case, retires from the LAPD. And the case is then handed off to other detectives within the Van Nuys homicide unit.
There were no active leads or items that were coming in at the time that were giving investigators new avenues to pursue.
I never thought that time was going to help solve the case, that it was going to ever get solved.
After Sherry's murder, time seemed to stand still for her family. But the decade that followed would bring a new chapter to the City of Angels.
The beating of Rodney King. O.J. Simpson, who's a fugitive.
Freeway that collapsed.
Not guilty of the crime of murder.
Lyle and Eric Menendez found guilty. Smalls was shot several times.
The impact of El Nino.
The Staples Center is just amazing. All beautiful and brand new.
Mr. Gore, the Democratic nominee, is in Los Angeles.
The Lakers gave LA one more thrill.
2001 was also a pivotal year for the Los Angeles Police Department, marking the launch of the LAPD's cold case unit. That year, detectives were handed over 9,000 unsolved murders spanning more than 2 decades. And Sherry Rasmussen's case was one of them.
I was a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department on the cold case squad. Her case was one of the last cases I looked at.
In 2001, Detective Cliff Shepard would oversee the Rasmussen cold case investigation. Why does a case like this go cold for so long?
Manpower, our priorities within the police department.
In fact, Shepard says Sherry's case had barely been touched for 10 years.
Up to that point, nobody else had looked at it other than Mayor and myself, really.
To get started, Shepard said, he made copies of select files from the Rasmussen murder book, creating his own Cliff's Notes. Why not just take the murder book so you have all the evidence with you?
Yeah, well, yes and no. Our problem was space. We were in a little office. It wasn't practical to take the entire murder book.
Breathing life into an old case is no easy feat, especially when you don't have all the evidence. Like a key piece of evidence relating to that bite mark found on Sherry's arm.
When I was going back over the reports, they indicate that a bite swab had been collected. And when I looked at the evidence, no evidence for a bite swab. So I checked with our property. They verified they did not have the swab booked with our evidence room. There's no record of it.
Generally speaking, how often does evidence go missing from a case file?
Extremely rarely, because there are professionals in the evidence rooms, there are professionals at the labs. They document everything.
To track down the swab, Shepard enlisted the help of Jennifer Francis, a criminalist at LAPD's Scientific Investigation Division.
And she had to make several calls, and several searches had to be made before eventually the bite mark swab was located.
Investigators are able to track down that missing bite mark evidence recovered from the murder scene. And the cold case team finds it here in a freezer at the LA County Medical Examiner's office.
The reason why it was way back in the freezer is because all those years ago it had been tested for blood type. And there it stayed all that time.
By 2001, DNA technology had come into its own, so Francis sent out the swab for analysis. But Shepard says given the LAPD's case backlog, it would take 2 full years for the results to come back. And those results would eventually turn the entire case on its head.
She informed me that I obtained a DNA profile.
The DNA profile was entered into the law enforcement database, but there was no match at the time. So it was a big jump in the case, but it wasn't quite enough.
It gave us a profile, but it didn't give us a name.
With little else to go on, this case is riding on that piece of DNA.
Once you got the DNA, did that prod you into doing any of the other investigative things like interviews?
At that time, no, I couldn't. I had a lot of cases going on, so it was as I had time. I just didn't have enough time. My biggest regret is not interviewing Rutten, the husband, not meeting with him and having a face-to-face. I knew he restarted his life and it was down in the San Diego area. But for me to just leave LA and go down to San Diego to interview him, I had other things going on. I couldn't do that at that time.
By 2005, Detective Shepard had moved on from the Rasmussen cold case investigation. 4 more years would pass before there would be another significant...
Remember ever covering a case like this? Sex, lies, law enforcement, innocent victim.
Because what you could tell from the crime scene, there was an assailant, but that Sherry fought back.
Oh, she did.
Incredible vigor and strength.
Absolutely, she did.
If I grab your arm, and you want to release my hand, what's very close exacts. So Sherry Rasmussen knows this is a life and death situation. Sherry tries to escape.
The co-counsel summarized the case as a bite, a bullet, a gun barrel, and a broken heart.
Where she talked about her belief that there was a personal motive for this crime.
For a cold case that was running on empty, I mean, this should have jump-started it. Why didn't it?
It didn't give us a name.
They eliminated the first 4 suspects, but they began to zero in on suspect number 5.
And suspect number 5 just happens to be a cop.
Can you imagine that moment? After all these years, the answer is behind a badge.
It's crazy that you've been working just down the hall from the murderer you'd been looking for years.
Yes.
1986, DNA testing was just in its infancy.
Detectives don't have a single witness. They have no murder weapon.
Nobody really saw anything.
Detectives at the time characterized it as a burglary gone wrong.
And the trail went cold for 15 years.
But in 2001, the LAPD formed a new cold case unit to look into cases that would qualify for DNA testing.
Investigators had reignited that cold case on the back of DNA evidence stored here. Criminalist Jennifer Francis, who'd been instrumental in tracking down and testing the bite mark swab, had a stunning revelation. It was female DNA.
I assumed it was going to be burglars, male burglars. A female? Who is she?
Once you got the DNA, you realized it was a woman. Were you curious about the fact that a woman might have been involved?
I was curious what woman.
This could be the break that the LAPD needs.
I think there are times that we felt Sherry's case would never be solved, but with the results of the DNA, it gave us renewed hope that Sherry's killer would be brought to justice.
The DNA analysis that revealed Sherry was bitten by a woman seemed not to have any effect on the direction of the LAPD's investigation.
Because what you could tell from the crime scene, that grabs the attention of detectives. Rutten told Detective Nuttall about an old friend and former romantic partner named Stephanie Lazarus.
Once number 5 was developed by Detective Nuttall, Detective Nuttall spoke to John Rutten again to learn a little bit more about his connection with Stephanie Lazarus.
We want to walk you through a timeline. It's very important. Starting, we believe we're close, but we'll have to have you kind of spell this out for us.
Rutten tells Detective Nuttall that Stephanie Lazarus is a name he's already given to detectives decades earlier.
I know that she went to go see Sherry, and I know that she was upset, that we weren't going to have the relationship. That's the reason for identifying her. So that's the reason I identified her 23 years ago, when we talked. One of my concerns is that was never, appears to be recorded.
And we know files.
I'm not trying to be inflammatory.
There's a certain level of frustration on our part.
Yeah,
More should have been documented. We're now forced 23 years later to literally almost start over again because we lack the documentation. that would have been crucial in this case.
There's no official record of Rutten mentioning Lazarus at the onset of the investigation, but there's a single reference made in the case file nearly 2 years after the murder.
And it's a notation along the lines of John Rutten called Stephanie Lazarus P/O, ex-girlfriend.
And when John Rutten spoke with the cold case detectives, he confirmed the meaning behind that P/O.
I gave him the name and I said she's a police officer.
Not only was Lazarus a police officer, but she's still on active duty as a detective.
Think about this. You're the cold case unit investigating one of your own, and her office is just down the hall on the 3rd floor of police headquarters. Police like to talk, that's why they're cops. They ask questions. These cops needed to keep this quiet.
For over 2 decades, Sherry Rasmussen's murder went unsolved. Until 2009, when cold case investigators began zeroing in on Stephanie Lazarus, a 25-year veteran of the LAPD. She had been hiding in plain sight all along.
She presented herself as very smart, capable, athletic. She was a Division I athlete.
Lazarus's connection to the Rasmussen case was through Sherry's husband. Her history with John Rutten went back more than 30 years when they first met as students at UCLA.
And Stephanie made no bones about the fact that she envisioned a big romantic future with John Rutten. The problem is that John has never, in his own words, looked at her in the same way.
After Stephanie graduated from UCLA, she joined the LAPD in the early 1980s. At a time when the department was striving to bring more women onto the police force.
She seemed to excel and do well in specialized assignments, but it was always competitive.
And that competitive fire, coupled with being a stellar athlete, was a perfect entree for Lazarus to participate in the California Police Olympics.
The California Police Olympics were an athletic competition open to police officers throughout the state.
Anita Ortega was one of the other few female LAPD officers at the time and a teammate of Lazarus.
Stephanie was an outstanding athlete and a basketball player. I thought her tenacity was incredible. She never quit.
She may have been tenacious on the hardwood, but off the court, Anita got to know a softer side of her teammate.
Seemed like a very nice person, always energetic, this happy-go-lucky kind of person. Really enjoyed hanging around her. Stephanie shared with me that she met her boyfriend, John, at UCLA. Said he was a great guy. I never met him, but I thought they were going to get married.
Thing was, not only was Lazarus not dating John in the summer of 1985, he was engaged to Sherry Rasmussen.
Stephanie never mentioned Sherry to me or the fact that John was in another relationship.
But entries in Lazarus's own diary seemed to reveal her despair after learning that Rutten was getting married. Stephanie Lazarus had a 600-page diary. What was the story that it told?
There were these tidbits of information right up to the wedding, right up to the killing, where she was indicating to herself how despondent she was.
Despite her apparent inner turmoil, to outside appearances, Lazarus seemed upbeat and happy.
She had a really nice smile, bright eyes, just a real positive kind of personality about her.
Fitness trainer Brian Brazzi says he had an immediate connection with Lazarus, but then just a few weeks after meeting, Brazzi says there's an odd encounter at his apartment.
There was a knock on my door. 2 female police officers fully uniformed at my door, Stephanie Lazarus being one of them, showing up unannounced. I had never given her my address.
Rossi says it's an uncomfortable moment, and he doesn't invite the women into his one-room studio apartment. Stephanie had shown up for reasons unknown, he says, and just as quickly, she leaves.
I really didn't know what to say or how to react.
Brazzi says despite his discomfort over that visit, the two decided to go out on a date anyway. But when he later had to break the date, Brazzi says he saw a different side of Lazarus.
The next time I saw her, the look that she gave me was like just dark and menacing, and I just kind of stopped in my tracks.
By the spring of 1986, after Sherry Rasmussen's murder, Lazarus's career at the LAPD was thriving.
Daryl Gates and the rest of the LAPD brass loved Stephanie Lazarus because having her face out there, her exuberance, her athleticism, it got people excited. She was a walking, talking recruitment drive. She even made an appearance on the game show Family Feud, pitted against arch rivals, the LA Fire Department.
She continued on an upward trajectory, and she became a detective for the Los Angeles Police Department.
In 1992, she was assigned to the Personnel Division as a background investigator, someone interviewing and passing judgment on applicants to the LAPD.
It seems eventually Stephanie puts John Rutten behind her. She marries another police officer, and the couple adopt a beautiful young daughter.
One of her last assignments was to be assigned to the art theft detail, a very specialized division.
The art theft detail investigated anything that was of value that was stolen as art.
At the time, the unit was the only one of its kind in the country, and with its rich and famous clientele, attracted local media attention.
I was a contributing writer to the LA Weekly, and I had heard about Don Harisik, who ran the art theft detail. So he reluctantly agreed to do an interview with me.
Also in attendance, the junior member of the unit, Detective Stephanie Lazarus.
Every time I talked to Don Harisik, Stephanie Lazarus interrupted me, and she kept interjecting snide, sarcastic, and semi-humorous comments after my questions. It was extremely disruptive. I asked Detective Lazarus, "What do you know about art?" And her answer was, "It hangs on the wall."
By 2009, the future looks bright for Stephanie Lazarus. She has a family now and is working in a prestigious unit.
She seemed like the happiest, luckiest person in LAPD.
All seems great. She has no clue that a net is closing in around her.
Stephanie, I don't know if you know my partner. Hey, right.
Hi.
Sure, nice to meet you.
See you guys.
How's it going?
Good.
Have a seat.
It's June of 2009, and Stephanie Lazarus has unwittingly walked into her own interrogation for the murder of Sherry Rasmussen. It's been 4 months since cold case detective Jim Nuttall first opened the case file and started carefully and quietly piecing together what he believed happened 23 years earlier.
When detectives zeroed in on Stephanie Lazarus, one of their own, it appeared that they really wanted to keep that close to the vest.
How important and how difficult was it to keep this under wraps and keep it secret?
The detectives took every effort to scrub her name from their investigation. Any references to her at that point were only oblique references like suspect number 5.
You know, it's difficult to track your own and know that one of your own is being accused of a crime or something illegal.
And to complicate matters, Lazarus's office is right down the hall from robbery homicide.
So the determination was made to not contact Stephanie Lazarus directly and to collect a sample of her DNA surreptitiously.
This is where the Special Investigations Section comes into play. Now, this group, SIS, their job is watching Stephanie, following her, and get evidence.
As luck would have it, she went to Costco a couple days after the surveillance had started, and she had a drink. And once she discarded that drink, the officers were able to collect her cup without her knowing it.
And when you collect the DNA from the cup, you match it against whoever the suspect number 5 is, what did they get?
They matched her DNA to the bite mark sample.
Can you imagine that moment? After all these years, and now we know the answer is behind a badge.
The DNA is a match, but cold case detectives still have to confront her face to face.
One of the detectives approaches Stephanie one day in her office, and he says something to the effect of, you know, Stephanie, we've got this suspect who seems to know about some big art heist. He's down in the lockup. We need to bring you down there.
Instead, it was just another detective. And so that was the stage that was set for that interview.
We've been assigned a case that we've been looking at.
Okay.
It's a new case.
So through the course of this police interview with Stephanie Lazarus, they are recording. She doesn't know.
Do you know John Rutten?
John Rutten?
Rutten.
Oh, yeah, I went to school with him. What's this all about?
Well, it's relating to his wife.
Immediately, they start talking about the Sherry Rasmussen murder.
Do you know what the circumstances were regarding her death?
Geez, let me think back. I don't know if it was, if it was a burglary or something.
She's using every skill she has to talk her way out of being connected to this in any way.
Connected to the crime or her old flame, John Rutten?
We dated. I can't say that he was my boyfriend. I don't know that he would consider me his girlfriend.
The detectives were able to get Stephanie Lazarus to confirm that she had gone to her hospital to speak with Sherry Rasmussen.
And yeah, I may have met her at a hospital.
But being that you're kind of used to see John, was everything okay between you guys? I mean, there was never anything uncomfortable or anything between you and her?
I don't know. I mean, it's been so many years.
You're probably a student of liars at this point in your career. Does that seem like a particularly adept liar to you?
It was gold for us because we had all of the evidence that disproved everything that she was saying.
Finally, when they say to her, we think we've got DNA from the crime scene, boom.
Because now I'm thinking I probably need to talk to a lawyer.
Okay.
I mean,
well,
because I know how this stuff works, okay?
She knows.
She absolutely knows. She knows at that point that she talked way too long.
And now it almost sounds like you're trying to pin something on me.
When the interview ended, you can hear her getting arrested.
Stephanie, you know you have the right to remain silent. Do you understand?
Yes.
You want to talk to us right now?
No.
All right. Okay.
This is crazy.
At this point, had you heard the name Stephanie Lazarus?
No. The only Lazarus I knew was the man raised from the dead that Jesus did. That's it.
This is the case that rose from the dead?
Yeah, it did.
On the 3rd floor of Parker Center this morning, police detectives arrested one of their own.
Detectives assigned to the Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division, Cold Case Squad, arrested Los Angeles Police Detective Stephanie Lazarus.
It's crazy that you've been working just down the hall from the murderer you'd been looking for years.
Yes.
Stephanie Lazarus didn't quite serve and protect, did she?
No.
When they said it was a police officer, I went, you're kidding. Absolutely kidding. A police officer committed this crime. I couldn't imagine that.
I was very shocked, but I also know how effective DNA testing is. And it kind of made me realize that, yeah, Stephanie must have committed the murder.
They were kind enough to come to our home and let my parents know that they had made the arrest. I mean, I cried because I was so excited, number one, that justice for my sister, but also for my dad.
I was so relieved and so happy and so sad. We had waited so long, but at last.
I'm totally in shock.
It was just a stunning turn of events. Then a whole new chapter begins.
The prosecution is armed with what appears to be rock-solid evidence. But this is LA after all, and strange things have been known to happen in court. So, you have to wonder, would a jury really believe a veteran detective is capable of committing a cold-blooded murder? 26 years after Sherry Rasmussen was murdered, the Stephanie Lazarus case finally comes to a courthouse here in downtown Los Angeles. The Los Angeles police detective accused of murdering her rival. That sounds more like a Hollywood blockbuster than a decades-old cold case, finally going to trial. At her arraignment, Stephanie Lazarus pleaded not guilty to the charge of first-degree murder.
There was a lot of buzz in the air, folks across the country very interested in this case, and why wouldn't they be? It's sex, lies, law enforcement, an innocent victim.
I covered the trial from A to Z, had a side view at Stephanie Lazarus. She sat in that orange jumpsuit. What a dichotomy from her police blues.
Your co-counsel summarized the case as a bite, a bullet, a gun barrel, and a broken heart.
Right. It highlighted all of the strong pieces of evidence.
So the bite mark, of course, referred to the DNA evidence found on Sherry Rasmussen's left forearm. The prosecution considered this their ace in the hole.
You had 4 separate analyses done, so by far that was the most important piece of evidence.
To explain how the bite mark got there, prosecutors presented their theory of how they believe Stephanie Lazarus was able to attack and kill Sherry Rasmussen. Stephanie Lazarus points the gun. Sherry grabs the arm.
If I grab your arm,
yeah,
and you want to release my hand, or get me to release my hand,
try to do this, or
you could grab me, or what's very close, exactly.
And the prosecution described the terrifying details about how they say Sherry attempted to escape with her life.
Stephanie Lazarus fires that gun twice, and 2 shots go out the backslider. So Sherry Rasmussen knows this is a life and death situation. Sherry tries to escape, and she goes down these stairs. She did not get out. They collected her fingernails at the front door.
Because she was literally clawing at the front door.
Trying to get out. Stephanie was able to get her to the living room floor and hit her over the head with the pottery and hit her again with the firearm in the face. At that point, Stephanie grabs this quilt and wraps the gun with this quilt. And she muffles the sound of those gunshots by putting that quilt right up to Sherry's chest and shooting 3 times.
Then there was the matter of the so-called broken heart described by the prosecution.
Sifting through her diary, there were these tidbits of information where she was having contact with John Rutten. She would see John, she would follow John, she would stalk John.
In Lazarus's journal, she wrote things such as, "I saw John Rutten's car. I put a note on it and watched the car for half an hour. I did visit John Rutten, but his girlfriend was over. I really didn't feel like working. Too stressed out about John. I have a real hard time concentrating these days."
When Stephanie's journals were entered into evidence, it clearly identified to me that she really never gave up on her obsession with John.
John Rutten testified about his love for his wife and how he did not expect or know that Stephanie was capable of committing this crime.
Rutten said he never once promised anything to Stephanie. He described a friendly relationship that involved casual sex. But then he made a jaw-dropping admission, something he had told investigators back in 2009. After he got engaged, he gets a call from Stephanie. He reveals that somehow they ended up in bed and had sex.
When John was on the stand, I learned for the first time that he had relations with the defendant shortly before marrying my sister, and that was very devastating.
When it came time for the defense to present its case, Lazarus's attorney, Mark Overland, tried to cast doubt on the chain of custody on the bite mark swab, suggesting that the evidence was tainted and Lazarus may have been framed.
The envelope that the vial was stored in was found in a pretty ratty condition.
He showed it to the jury. Would you trust this? You don't know who opened that vial.
The strength of this evidence is that each piece was collected over a course of a long period of time, which would have made framing Stephanie Lazarus extremely implausible, if not impossible.
In his closing argument, defense attorney Mark Overland claimed those journal entries didn't amount to obsession, arguing John was mentioned only 5 times among almost 600 pages. After almost 3 weeks of trial, the case went to the jury. They returned with a verdict in less than 2 days.
We, the jury, in the above-entitled action, find the defendant, Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, guilty of the crime of murder of Sherry Rasmussen.
It was just like a rush of relief that it's over. Relief for my father that he finally was vindicated and he had his answers.
Stephanie Lazarus' sentencing hearing was held in March of 2012.
So People versus Stephanie Lazarus. Matter is set today for sentencing.
A statement from Nels Rasmussen was read by the prosecutor.
Sherry was a beautiful, talented, gifted person and a loving daughter. Her senseless death caused pain that will never, ever heal.
And John Rutten tried to describe the heavy burden it seems he will carry for the rest of his life.
I'm John Rutten. The fact that Sherry's death occurred because she met and married me brings me to my knees. I have resigned myself to trying to endure the daydreams about a world where Sherry is still with us. And this pointless tragedy never occurred.
Thank you, Mr. Rutten.
The judge is about to announce Stephanie Lazarus' sentence for first-degree murder and use of a gun.
Court will now pronounce sentence.
But this case is far from over. Sherry Rasmussen's friends and family have no idea about the shocking turn of events that await them in the not-too-distant future. Will a killer walk free? It's March 2012, and Stephanie Lazarus has just been found guilty for the murder of Sherry Rasmussen.
Never admitting guilt, Lazarus waved goodbye and smiled to her family as she left the courtroom.
What was her sentence? She received 25 to life first-degree murder and 2 years for the use of a gun.
There had never been an arrest of an active LAPD detective for murder under circumstances this salacious, a cold case. And once the Rasmussens stepped forward, allegations of a cover-up.
LAPD should want to know why it took so long, and there should be accountability for that passage of time.
The Rasmussens took action in 2 ways. One was to file a complaint directly with the LAPD, alleging a cover-up to protect Officer Lazarus from criminal prosecution. They also filed a civil lawsuit against the LAPD, making the same allegation.
The day that Stephanie Lazarus was arraigned, the Rasmussens asked to get answers as to what happened in 1986 and what happened that nothing was done despite our repeated requests.
The LAPD denied the Rasmussens' allegations, citing immunity, and the lawsuit was eventually dismissed because of the statute of limitations. As for the complaint the Rasmussens filed directly with the LAPD's Internal Affairs Department launched an investigation in response to the allegations. Journalist Matthew McGough obtained a copy of the Internal Affairs file, which wasn't released publicly.
A total of 6.8 hours were devoted to trying to determine whether or not Stephanie Lazarus was protected in an internal cover-up. More than a year passed before it was closed with no one being interviewed, no investigative conclusions.
The Rasmussen complaint was classified as unfounded because the judge had dismissed the LAPD from any liability. 2020 reached out to the LAPD with questions about the handling of this case, and they declined to comment. While the Rasmussen family continued to raise questions about why Lazarus was not arrested for so long, they were certain that she'd spent at least decades behind bars. But just last November, there was a development that took everyone by surprise.
It was late 2023 when Stephanie had her first appearance before the California Parole Board. This was years before anybody thought she'd be eligible for early release.
It turns out, in the years since Lazarus's conviction, the state of California passed a new law giving special consideration towards paroling so-called youthful offenders who had committed their crimes when they were under the age of 26. Lazarus was 25 when she murdered Sherry Rasmussen. Letters supporting Lazarus's release were submitted to the parole board by friends, family, and fellow prisoners.
She took responsibility for committing the murder for the first time, something that she had denied throughout her trial and throughout her incarceration until all of her appeals were exhausted.
She showed absolutely no remorse and brushed it off as if my Aunt Sherry did not fight her, then she wouldn't have fight back, that she wouldn't have killed her.
The only reason she confessed is because she wants to get out on parole.
And at the conclusion of that parole hearing, Lazarus, to the outrage of many, was granted parole. What was your reaction to her being granted this parole?
It was a miscarriage of justice.
However, before that decision became final, California Governor Gavin Newsom intervened in the case and requested it go to the full parole board for reconsideration. Have you made it your mission to try to keep Stephanie Lazarus behind bars?
Yes. I mean, I'm going to do everything in my power.
In a follow-up hearing with the full parole board, Sherry's supporters came out in force to argue against Lazarus's release.
Moderator, we will now take speakers in opposition to Stephanie Lazarus.
She deceived and lied to everyone for almost 40 years. How can this board believe that she has changed?
Before he died, Sherry's father, Nels Rasmussen, recorded a video message to be played in the event that Stephanie Lazarus ever came up for parole.
If one looks at the damage that she did to my daughter's face, it's almost like she wanted to destroy the beauty that Sherry exuded.
The board's earlier decision to approve parole was put on hold pending yet another review.
I say expect the worst and prepare for our next step when that happens.
And what's that next step?
Just keep fighting.
For the family and everyone else concerned, the day has arrived where we'll find out if Stephanie Lazarus is released or remains behind bars.
My dad had a boat down in San Diego. We enjoyed the ocean and the beaches.
Was part of your father lost when the killer wasn't found?
I think I would say yes. I mean, she was just glued to my dad. We have lots of pictures of them just arm in arm.
And he never stopped fighting for her.
Nope, never.
And that struggle to keep Sherry's killer behind bars came to a head just this week as parole officials met for the third time to determine Stephanie Lazarus's fate.
I served as the pool reporter for the parole rescission hearing held for Stephanie Lazarus.